So good evening, everyone. My name is Aryan Govindakrishnan. I am from the Economics and Finance cluster. Today, we are here to talk upon the roundtable topic about should antitrust laws be reformed to better address the challenges posed by big tech companies. In an era dominated by tech companies wielding immense market power, the question of whether antitrust laws should be reformed has gained much of a prominence. Concerns over the influence and competition shifting and data privacy implications of companies like Amazon, Google, Facebook has sparked calls for legislative updates. So today we are gathered here to ponder upon few questions regarding whether the antitrust laws be reformed to better address the challenges posed by big tech companies like Amazon and Google. So moving forward to the first question, are the existing antitrust laws equipped to address the dominant position of certain big tech companies? So who would like to go first? Yeah, Arush.
So, short answer is I don't think the current legislations address this issue in an effective manner. So, first, we need to understand why they are in such a dominant position in the first place. And the big reason why is because they have such an extensive control over data. And I think even in the future, we'll need more robust legislations with regards to how data is handled because they have disproportionately high control over it. So a very good example would be any Android phone that we buy would come with Google services and Google apps preloaded in it. Android itself is owned by Google. But as a consumer, I'm not really getting an option apart from Google Maps when I want to navigate to a certain place. As a developer, if I want my app to be listed on the Play Store, I am compelled to sort of agree to the terms and services that Google puts forward, and I don't really get a say in it. So I think in such situations, the existing antitrust laws are not very effective when it comes to the interests of other parties involved and also the end consumer. When it comes to companies like Meta and Google, they have always had a tussle with even governments when it comes to things like data protection. They've had a tussle with telecom companies because telecom companies often um, ask Google to pool in and contribute to the costs of setting up networks across different places because they have such a high amount of traffic. They contribute to such a high amount of traffic. So I think these issues really need to be addressed if we are to introduce amendments.
Yeah,
Just
Ishita.
yeah. So sorry.
Oh,
Yeah. Is that you go ahead, please. I'll go after Shita. No problem.
Okay, I'm really sorry about that. So the existing antitrust laws in India, which are primarily governed by the Competition Act of 2002, they have been in place to promote fair competition and essentially to prevent the anti-competitive practices in various sectors, including technology. Now, the question of whether these laws are adequately equipped to address the dominant position of certain big tech companies is extremely complex. Like one of the key provisions under the Competition Act of 2002, which deals with the anti-competitive agreements in Section 3, prohibits agreements that cause or are likely to cause an appreciable adverse effect on competition within India. Now, it covers practices such as price fixing, bid rigging, and market allocation. And in the context of big tech companies where collaborations and agreements are common, this section becomes pertinent in evaluating the legality of the business practices. Additionally, Section 4 of the Competition Act, it addresses the abuse of dominant position and it prohibits any enterprise or group of enterprises from abusing their dominant position in the relevant market. Now, determining dominance involves an assessment of market share, financial strength, and the ability to operate independently of competitive forces. If a big tech company is found to be in a dominant position and abusing it, the Competition Commission of India has the authority to take corrective measures. Now, this act it not only empowers the CCI, that is the Competition Commission of India, to investigate and penalize anti-competitive practices, they also have the authority to impose fines and issue cease and desist orders and even recommend structural remedies to address competition concerns. However, the effectiveness of these provisions in dealing with specific challenges posed by big tech companies requires constant scrutiny and adaptation. Now, one notable aspect is the rapidly evolving nature of the technology sector. Traditional antitrust laws may face challenges in keeping pace with the dynamic nature of the digital economy. Moreover, big tech companies often operate in global markets and their services transcend the geographical boundaries. This raises questions about the extraterritorial application of Indian antitrust laws and the coordination of efforts with the international regulatory bodies. And another point of contention is that the unique business models employed by big tech companies, such as data driven services and network effects, these companies often amass vast amounts of user data, raising concerns about data privacy and potential abuse of market power. Now, while data protection laws in India, such as Personal Data Protection Bill 2019, addresses privacy concerns, the intersection of antitrust and data protection remains an evolving area. So, essentially, while the existing antitrust laws in India provide a foundation for addressing the dominant position of big tech companies, the ongoing scrutiny and adaptation are still necessary. The dynamic nature of technology sector, coupled with the global reach of these companies, it poses a very unique challenge that requires a nuanced and proactive regulatory approach. Policymakers and regulators, they have to collaborate and take into account the international counterparts and adapt criteria for assessing dominance and ensure that the evolving nature of digital markets is reflected in the antitrust regulations.
Like,
No, I have nothing to add. So it was really great to hear a legal point of view, and was very happy to hear Arif's point as well. You can go with the second question, Aryan. Thank
all
you.
right. So the second question for today would be: Are big tech companies shifting innovations by acquiring their competitors who are smaller in size? So, like, are the companies trying to kill off the small companies by acquiring them? So that would be the second. Yeah, Vasu.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Yes, I would think, according to me, I would certainly say that the big tech companies, they make it a point to acquire smaller companies just to make sure that they stick in innovation. If I were to take examples, I would definitely say I would say so many examples, right from Facebook acquiring WhatsApp, Facebook acquiring Instagram. Like all these are like anti-competitive practices, and the answer to this is like how they easily get away with this. I would certainly say that lobbying plays a very important role in making sure that these companies practice anti-competitive like anti-competitive practices. So I strongly feel that if we have to find a solution, the solution must come from a policy point of view, wherein lobbying to ensure that the companies are in a some kind of a dominant position is something which is which is not made. So these are the points I wanted to say.
Anushka, you would like to do this?
So adding on to what Vasu was saying, I think uh, acquisition aside, I think a bigger problem is the barrier to entry itself for a lot of these companies are very, very high. So that is the reason why you don't see a lot of these social media applications really taking off. There are a lot of them that appeared even in India during the pandemic, and you don't see them having the same level of user base or daily active users that Instagram or Facebook might have. So, acquisition aside, I think because these platforms have made us so dependent on them, the barrier to entry for any other brand to come up itself is very, very difficult.
Yeah, Anushka.
Yeah, I just since we've covered everything, I really liked Vasu's WhatsApp and Facebook example because I remember when Facebook acquired WhatsApp, and I've been reading about this before we had this discussion, and I saw that it's not just me, but a lot of people feel that by Facebook acquiring WhatsApp, they did kill innovation that WhatsApp as an independent entity could have undertaken. And it's been happening for years. It's been happening for years. There's this trend of creating a kill zone and then killer acquisitions, which is why we have the Competition Commission of India also looking at cases and trying to regulate acquisitions of this sort, where big companies are acquiring small companies and they're trying to have an advantage just because they're more dominant in the industry. So about the question that was if big companies are stifling innovation, even I'd say that that's been happening for quite some time. And it's good that in India, at least, we have the Competition Commission of India, which is a body there to regulate anti-competitive agreements and things that can happen like this, which could actually lead to price rigging or one company dominating like a whole sector or industry.
Yeah. So moving on to the next question. Does reform in antitrust laws offer solution to promote fair and ethical data use, or is it if or is the by introducing these reform would the government be um, pressuring the companies to adhere to strict rules? Would it disrupt the market in a sense? That would.
Could
Okay,
you
so
please repeat the question?
Yeah. So the question was, does reform in antitrust laws offer solution to promote fair and ethical data use? Yeah, Arush.
So, as far as I understand, antitrust laws only deal with concentration of power to a large extent, how much power or influence a particular company would have. So, if handling data does give them that degree of power, then yes, amending antitrust laws accordingly would help. But I really think we should also have a robust data protection law running in parallel with this because that definitely does help. And this question is very interesting because what is ethical use of data to the government might not be my definition of ethical use of data as a consumer. I would want the end-to-end encryption that WhatsApp provides in its services, but the government would want access to data when it comes to the safety of the nation or anything that sort of hinders national security or something that would interest the government. So this is very interesting. I think there must be a balance if we are interested in any form of amendment to ensure that the interests of each party is addressed properly.
Yes, boss.
yeah, thank you. Look, if you would ask me if the antitrust laws in India they require reform, they definitely require reform. We have seen many instances of companies abusing their dominant position, and I could take so many examples, right from Reliance Jio, which had abused its own dominant position to attract more subscribers. I would definitely say that the antitrust laws in India they require a huge amount of reform. And speaking of data security and protection of data, the Indian government had brought a bill recently uh, protecting the the your users' data and also ensuring data security. But I strongly feel that more needs to be done in this space. If we can take an inspiration from the European Union, wherein they have strict guidelines and strict rules with regard to data protection and the data handling, I would definitely say that India has to take an inspiration from the European Union regulations.
Anyone else would like to? Yes.
So I think that reforming antitrust laws can play a crucial role in promoting fair and ethical use, especially in the context of the rapidly evolving digital landscape. So, because the intersection of antitrust and data use raises important questions about market competition and consumer welfare and the potential abuse of market power by companies that control vast amounts of user data. Now, antitrust laws can be instrumental in preventing the emergence of data monopolies, where a single entity controls a significant portion of the valuable user data. And reform efforts can focus on identifying and addressing anti-competitive practices that contribute to the concentration of data in the hands of a few dominant players. Also, antitrust reforms can incorporate provisions that specifically address privacy concerns associated with the collection and use of consumer data. Now, this might involve collaboration with data protection authorities to ensure a comprehensive regulatory framework that safeguards both competition and individual privacy rights. Furthermore, reforms can encourage the development of standards and regulations that promote data portability. Now, this would empower users to have greater control over their data, allowing them to switch between services more easily and fostering competition among companies to offer better privacy and data protection measures. And antitrust reforms can recognize data as a key market factor and incorporate into the criteria for assessing market dominance as well. This consideration would be particularly relevant in industries where data is a critical asset, such as the technology and digital services sector as well.
Great points, guys. So moving on to the next question. How should international cooperation and collaboration be factored into the antitrust reform efforts? Since nowadays all the countries are coming, all the companies are not only restricted to one place, one country, they are spread across the different countries in the world. So how should international cooperation and collaboration be factored into antitrust reform efforts? Yeah, Ishita.
Right. So international cooperation and collaboration are again crucial elements in antitrust reform efforts, especially in a globalized economy where businesses operate across borders. Now, harmonization of antitrust laws is very crucial since antitrust reform efforts should strive towards greater harmonization of antitrust laws across jurisdiction. Now, this involves aligning legal frameworks and definitions and enforcement mechanisms to create consistency and facilitate cross-border collaboration. Furthermore, establishing mechanisms for the exchange of information and mutual assistance among antitrust authorities is very essential. This can involve sharing evidence or investigation techniques and best practices to strengthen the ability of regulators to address global anti-competitive conduct. Bilateral and multilateral agreements can formalize these cooperative efforts. Furthermore, antitrust reform should empower regulators to conduct cross-border investigations seamlessly. Now, this can include provisions allowing antitrust authorities to cooperate on investigations that span multiple jurisdictions. Shared resources and expertise can expedite the resolution of complex cases involving international dimensions. And establishing global task forces and networks can also facilitate ongoing collaboration among antitrust authorities because these forums provide a platform for regular communication and the exchange of insights and joint initiatives to address emerging challenges in the global marketplace. Because essentially, the international cooperation is integral to the success of anti-reform efforts. As businesses operate on a global scale, regulators may work together to ensure that the antitrust laws remain I'm sorry, remain effective, consistent, and capable of addressing the complexities of the modern economy. And by fostering collaboration and sharing resources and harmonizing legal frameworks, the international community can take a step forward to create a robust antitrust environment that promotes fair competition and protects the consumer welfare across borders.
Yeah, Anushka.
Yes, I just wanted to factor in into what Ishita was just mentioning. So right now, the best data protection mechanism or laws that we have is in Europe, and it's called GDPR, and it governs the whole of Europe. And at least for me, I feel that in Europe, at least they have that stability. In all those countries, they have the same laws protecting each other, protecting their citizens, which is why it becomes easier for extraterritoriality to factor in. Because laws in one country may not, like we all know, laws in one country may not be very similar to laws in another country. And when it comes to all of this, it becomes a huge point of discussion because why would one country want to have their data protection laws like another country? Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah, okay. Yes. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention. And the second thing was that so far I see it very difficult for countries to come together and have a data protection system or laws that are coherent around the world. Because for India, we have the Data Protection Act of 2023, in which we still don't have the right to be forgotten, which is very common when it comes to Europe and the US. And for US, we have again a different set of data protection laws where they have different data protection laws for every sector or every industry in their economy. So far, in my opinion, I don't see it happening anytime soon. But just like Ishita mentioned, if it can happen, if we can factor in international collaboration and cooperation and have a more stable way for data privacy or antitrust laws, then it would be good. Thank you.
Thank you, Anushka. Arush, would you like to add on?
Yeah, so adding on to what Anushka said, even I agree that this might be very difficult to execute, practically speaking, because every country will have a very different philosophy on how data is to be processed. I am very sure a country like the United States will be much more lenient with something like processing of data as compared to India. And there's one more complication that arises out of this is that if a lot of countries come together to really work on a robust framework for data processing or protection, it is very easy for a company to just export the data and send it to another country where the jurisdiction is different, and it would enable them to process data in which these countries might not approve of. And this happens very often. A lot of the data that is collected by companies like Instagram is often taken outside of the country in order to be processed in various different ways. So um, when it comes to international collaboration, I personally feel it is very, very difficult. We would just end up with another treaty, which is only binding on the countries that sign it. International law is not really known to be very effective when it comes to being binding. So, yeah, I think the answer is far more complicated than we think it is.
Thank you, Arush. Since we are coming to the end of our limit for the meeting, um, we could move on to the last question, which is, can existing antitrust laws be effectively enforced and adapted to address the challenges of big tech, or is sector specific regulations necessary? We could just briefly touch upon this sector. Yeah, Anushka.
Yes, I'll quickly summarize whatever I have to say. First of all, for me, I believe that sector-wise regulation in a country like India wouldn't be perceived like we would want it to be perceived. Because right now, if we look at the precedent, we have the Data Protection Act and it applies equally to all sectors of the economy and all industries. But if we have specific regulations, some industries might feel that they're being um, that they have more laws and they are being surveillanced more than the other industries. And when it comes to social media, I feel over regulation can become a huge problem. Because I remember, I think 1 year or 2 years back, when all of us were in COVID, we saw that Twitter and the government had a lot of issues, if you all could recall. So I think sector specific regulation is necessary, but at the same time, I don't think it's a very viable option given how the political climate of our country is and of the world at large also.
Yeah, Vasu.
Yes. Yes, I think I definitely feel that the existing and antitrust laws, even though they require a huge amount of updation, the enforcement of the existing laws is something where where the Indian government is finding it difficult. I know, since big tech companies, they have the huge amount of political connections, and they actually know the loopholes on how to operate. So if we actually find a mechanism to plug those loopholes, and also we ensure that they don't actually function their business in an ethical way, in an unethical way, I think I would definitely say that we might require an updation of the existing laws, and at the same time we must ensure that we enforce the law correctly.
Yeah, Arush.
Okay, I see we are running out of time, so I'll make it very quick. Sector-specific legislations, sure. If it is possible to introduce it, I think it's a very good thing. But the issue comes with the sheer variety of websites that are able to collect our data. So a website like Amazon would fall under e-commerce, which collects a lot of our data. Something like Instagram falls under social media, which collects a different type of data. So it's going to be quite difficult to sort of club all of these companies together and make a sector specific resolution. I think legislation, not resolution. I think a better alternative would be to simply work on making the existing IT acts a lot more stronger than it is, because last I checked, it's not, it's pretty out of date considering the sort of tech that we are used to today. So I think that would be a much more viable solution and much more effective solution.
Yeah, Arush. So it was a really we come to an end for the roundtable. It was a really good roundtable. The points put forth by all of you guys have been really mind-blowing points. It has really helped us to understand the topic in more depth and to understand the relevance of this issue in our country. So thank you all for attending the roundtable.